3, 2, 1, go.
Today on the Shrewd Dudes podcast, we got a couple cool stories to cover here. Apparently, naked people are going full Grand Theft Auto in the streets of San Francisco. And not only that, we also are finding out that being a meat eater is a good thing again because you live longer. Also, South Africa is going a little too genocidal for our taste. Um, and pro-life people are still being arrested for everything. And also in American culture, NBC News had with the most insane cell phone we have seen in quite some time. And speaking of cell phone, the American judicial and justice system is clowning itself once again with their incredibly poorly hidden but very obvious attempts to become the most corrupt nation on earth. It is crazy out there. We got a lot of stuff to cover, but you're not going to want to miss this episode of the Shrewd Dudes podcast.
All right, we are back for another Tuesday News Day after a weekend of
Revelry
and just a very busy time overall for me.
It was, yeah. This guy was on it. You were on it, man.
I was wheeling and dealing all weekend.
One way to put it.
Yes. Okay. All right.
What'd you get up to this weekend, man?
Okay, my son wants to say hello. Okay.
Oh, hello. The little man is back.
You go, buddy.
They both have crazy hair. I see where he gets it from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's right.
Anyways, so we'll start with you because I'm guessing your weekend was not as crazy as mine.
I don't know. I went biking on a crazy bike trip on the weekend. And not only that, but I got the first cramp I've had for a very long time. It's been a long time since I've got a cramp, but I basically had to collapse on the Legacy Trail a long time. On the way back, be like, as my leg was like, completely, spazzing out. That was fun. But yeah, I was also going to have another hike on Sunday, but my buddy called me like literally like an hour before we were going to leave. It's like, oh, by the way, I can't go. And I'm like, oh, dude, the whole Sunday planned out for a big cool excursion, and he canceled on me. So not cool, man. Not cool. What the heck?
Yeah, well,
what about you, man?
Hiking sort of made my Sunday a little more lame. So that was because my buddy Cade went hiking and didn't come back into the city until like 8 o'clock when he was supposed to be back by like 6.
Oh, you were expecting him for D&D?
Yep. But anyways, so Friday night, find a crazy deal for a 4K TV, which I've been looking for a while.
Sure.
Found a 55-inch 4K for $200 plus stand. It was just a rockin' good deal.
That's a ridiculously good deal.
Yep. And then on Sunday,
that thing was so hot it was on fire when you brought it into the house.
Yes, pretty much. Well, it was sort of funny because my neighbor saw me like loading the TV from the van, and he's like hanging out outside his house because he doesn't want to smoke inside his house with his kid.
Right.
And so he's like hanging out outside his house, and I'm like, hey, do you want like a cheap TV? And he's like, he's Ukrainian. He's like, I know has TV. I'm like, do you want one? He's like, why? And I'm like, well, as you could see, I just took one into the house. So, like, you could have one. And I'm like, for cheap. And he's like, how much? I'm like,
speaks very poor English.
I'm like, you're my neighbor, so $40. And he's like, how big? Like this? And I'm like, no, like this. 50. And he's like, 50.
His kids are going to be super excited.
Oh, and then he looks at me and he's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing is wrong. I just don't have the remote at the moment, but I'll find it and I'll give it to you because we're neighbors. And he's like, I see. And so he comes and like checks it out and he's like, this is like too cheap. I'm like, yeah, it's cheap. I'm like, but you know, like you guys could use a TV, and you've only been in Canada for like 9 months, so why not? I'll just give you a TV.
How nice of you, Mr. Benevolent over here, Mr.
Yeah,
Benevolent.
I know. Wasn't
That's
I
right.
just
Earning those brownie points for heaven.
brownie points for heaven? Only brownie points for heaven if I don't tell people about it, but I'm telling people about it, so I've lost the brownie points. So, anyways, we could go on about stories.
Right, we could.
But I will not. But I built a old computer yesterday. It was a bit of a pain in the butt.
I love how you start with like, we could go on about stories. Speaking of such things, here's another
I'm not going
story
to
I got
continue.
to share.
I'm not going to. That's where I'm going to end it.
You can't help yourself. You just can't.
All right. Well, let's stop myself.
You're basically like Grandpa Simpson. Did I tell you about
Let's talk about this story from the New York Post, which is crazy.
I invented Facebook.
Yeah, sure.
Tell us about the story, man. Tell us about the story.
So, from the New York Post, naked woman gets out of car, open fires on Bay Bridge during rush hour.
Oh, this is
lovely. This is
kid-friendly content.
So it's censored. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
So, naked woman in California got out of her car in one of the nation's busiest bridges and began firing a gun Tuesday. So this was last Tuesday. Bizarre scene unfolded during rush hour on the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge, according to California Highway Patrol. Driver called 911 to report that another driver had brandished a gun at them on the I-80 span, which crosses the San Francisco Bay. She then stopped in the middle of her lane, got out of her car with a knife, and then began yelling at other drivers. She then got back and
got out of the car.
No.
Or did she get naked?
Then she got back in the car, continued driving to Oakland, and then stopped again at the toll plaza, exited the car, this time with a gun and sans clothing. Officers told the Post. And so this was a picture of her sans clothing shooting at passerby.
Oh, so just another day in San Francisco.
Yeah, so this is her car, and this is her just walking around the middle of the highway, firing gunshots into the air.
What is wrong with people?
Yeah. So,
I mean, I just San Francisco. Does this seem to you like San Francisco is becoming almost like surreal?
Oh, totally surreal. So
like,
this is some of the footage. It's censored.
Okay, now to another big story with us tonight.
So here it is. Just walking down the highway,
firing
it in the air.
Shooting. She's naked in the street and left her car
What the
right
heck?
there.
So CHP says the woman stopped her car on the
Just the parking lot. Whatever. It's just parking in the middle of the street.
Let's hop out of the car and start firing it. Okay. Come on.
What crazy people.
Curtis. It's 8:30. All right. So.
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah, that was a bit of an aperitif.
What?
For all the things that come next. So, we're going to jump into our stories because we have a lot of things to talk about today.
A little appetizer, eh?
Yes, an aperitif.
Is that what it is? I thought
well,
it was
no.
hors d'oeuvre.
Hors d'oeuvre is like...
Hors d'oeuvre.
An aperitif is like a... Here, I'll look up the exact definition of aperitif.
I've only heard of hors d'oeuvres. They're supposed to be like appetizers. Aperitif?
An alcoholic drink taken before a meal to stimulate the appetite.
So basically, it's an alcoholic hors d'oeuvre.
Yep. So exactly what this is, because it's crazy, like booze, right before, and stimulates you for the rest of the show.
It basically is like it's a palate cleanser before.
It's a palate cleanser before we start talking about stories.
All right. Well, that's one way to start.
All right, so let's talk for this story from the Daily Wire. High school boys become more conservative while girls move further to the left. Survey. Political divide between high school boys and girls across America has widened tremendously in recent years as boys identify as conservative while girls are moving to the left, according to a recent survey. Annual polling over the past 3 years conducted by Monitoring the Future and University of Michigan showed that 12th grade boys are identifying as conservative. More 12th grade boys are identifying as conservative than liberals, while 12th grade girls' liberal political affiliation continues to rise. Most recent surveys show that 23% of 12th grade boys identified as conservative, while only 13% of senior boys had considered themselves liberal. Around 30% of senior girls identified as liberals in 21 and 22, up from 25% in 2020. So, the psychotherapist said he's not surprised by the study's finding. You look at all the messaging in society, it's sort of like everything is about advancing within minorities, and young men, young boys sort of being left out. they're sort of being left behind. And then you have politicians out there saying things like the number one problem in America is white men, things of that nature. And I think the 12th grade boys are kind of seeing through this. We're creating this idea that if you're a male, then there's something wrong with that and that you're bad. Which is something that's 100% true. It's what's happening.
Something that's really interesting is that the same phenomenon is happening in the black community. I remember hearing somebody saying in America that black men are abandoning the Democrats in a big way, and black women are not. It's like a weird phenomenon, like that they're actually saying like it may actually have a major impact on the next election because black men are basically becoming totally disillusioned with the Democrat Party, and nope, like we're not buying this shady deal, and and apparently it's the biggest supporters of Democrats as a demographic are like white liberal women. Like they're basically like the biggest. The biggest.
Doesn't surprise me in any way.
Yeah, it's. I mean, again, the difference between the sexes is like just.
Well, and like the divide is even like I could even characterize it as like this is. It's kind of the Barbie movie effect.
Yeah.
Because like you look at the messaging that's been prominent in movies and culture and society in the past few years, and like this psychologist had said. Young men, boys, are being told that they are the worst threats of society, that they're bad, that they're basically better off dead.
You're a bad boy.
Because men and boys, and especially white cis boys, are a negative detriment to society, and it would be better if they all just disappeared.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't help anybody. Like, this is not a message which is about unity, about strength. This is not a message about bettering oneself. It's a message about guilt because of perceived victimhood by another group. Or it's about guilt because other groups would like white men to take responsibility for things that happened hundreds of years ago.
Well, I think it's also like the modern feminist movement that's like in power today. They don't really have anything to offer boys. There's no advantage for a boy to be liberal, other than like being a simp, ultimately. Yep. But
well, and that's what they've transformed boys into,
right?
Like, and they want you to be like Ken.
Yeah.
Like, and they kind of highlight this, and there was this one sequence in one of the like cartoon Barbie movies that actually highlights this. And it's this film, and they have like kind of a side plot about Ken trying to find a job. And in the end, Ken just gives up. And he says, being Barbie's boyfriend is enough for me. And it's like, yikes.
Yikes, yeah, it was bad.
Like, this is not a good example to tell young men, to tell young boys. It's like, yes, this is what you should be idolizing. You should be idolizing this kind of subservient culture to women, and then when another man comes to exert power over your woman, you do nothing. Like, we talked about this before. Like, yes, if people were actually doing what was showcased in the Barbie film, like walking up to women and catcalling them and sexually assaulting them, then yes, that would be something that should be mentioned and should be called out. But the simple fact is that it's not happening in today's society. And trying to point fingers and say that it is not helping our culture. It's only making things worse because it's making people feel that they're the problem. And that's giving them guilt, and it's giving them all sorts of regret for something that they didn't do.
Yeah. I think here at the very bottom of the article, they point out some interesting stats. Okay, so the rule. The rule is in and whether it's like CRT, like which is like the Black Lives Matter kind of like talking points, or in feminism, or in all these any form of disparity is always due to, if it's CRT, racism. If it's feminism, it's the patriarchy. If it's queer theory, it's always the oppressive Christian right, whatever, right? But look at these disparities here. So In the 2018-2019 academic year, just 74 men received a bachelor degree for every 100 women, which shows that men are falling behind. 2023, 64% of women at public universities were graduating, compared to 58% of men.
Mm-hmm.
Overall enrollment, women are outnumbering men by almost 60% to 40%. Women are outnumbering men by almost 60. I don't know why I'm hearing my voice back.
Well, no, it's because I'm trying to edit stuff on Kick.
On to go.
And you basically have to turn on the sound to edit it. It's not smart.
Good to know. So basically, like, there's disparities here. Now, if we follow the logic of the left, be like, oh, this is a disparity, hence this is all misandry. That's like, well, we're not that silly that we just kind of buy into that kind of like nonsense thinking. We actually realize, like, yeah, there's factors and there's reasons. We have to like figure out what those are. But it's not because of man hating, like, exclusively as the only simplistic, reason or something like that. There's like lots more to it. But yeah, I'm not surprised. Like all of this seems to kind of like, make sense. The biggest reason is because one of the big differences in the genders is that men tend to be more assertive as a whole, and women tend to be more agreeable as a whole. So like the idea of being liberal appeals to women because, when it comes to women, it's like, oh, you want to be a good person, you want to be liked by your peers. You can have that if you buy into the fake compassion of the left. And for women, that's a very appealing sale because they can feel good about themselves by virtue signaling about how we care about blacks, we care about like climate change, we care about the gay people and trans people, and that really appeals to women in a big way. So I'm not terribly shocked that this appeals to women because most of the messaging is designed by nature to basically appeal to people who want to be thought well of by those around them, which tends to be something that appeals more to women than to men. I don't know what happened to your video, but it's gone.
Okay, give me 1 second. Apparently, sure. I didn't realize I had to have that window open the entire time, so it'll come back in just a second. I minimized it, and then it like shut down the page. So
good to know. Second. You're just doing some fun stuff back there.
Apparently, yes. So I'm back now.
Fun. Well, now that you're back, let's talk about meat, Stephen, and how it makes you last longer, which is kind of funny that that's actually a thing. I was like, oh.
Like live longer.
Live longer. Well, that live longer, last longer. It's all the same.
Bit of both, but one is definitely more PG.
You have more staying power.
Yes. So, meat consumption and longevity. In February of last year, the International Journal of General Medicine published a study that was easy to miss, as no major media publication reported on the total meat intake is associated with life expectancy, a cross-sectional data analysis of 175 contemporary population.
Ooh, try to say that 3 times fast.
By Wenping Yu and his team of researchers. Wenping.
I know.
For years, we've heard that the secret to long life is to cut back on meat consumption, increase your intake of carbs. Increase your intake of carbs?
You gotta eat the bugs, Stephen. You gotta eat the bugs.
Okay. Advice that is enshrined in the USDA's dietary guidelines for Americans, but that's not what these researchers found. So, his team analyzed data from 175 countries and territories, in other words, almost the entire world, and used various...
You and his team.
Yeah, because the guy's Wenzong.
Yep.
In other words, almost the whole world, and used various statistical methods to explore and compare the correlation between overall life expectancy at 5 years of life, and intakes of meats and carbohydrate crops, respectively. The established risk factors to life expectancy, caloric intake, urbanization, obesity, and education levels were included as the potential confounders. The research found that worldwide meat intake was associated with a longer life. This relationship remained significant when influences of caloric intake, urbanization, obesity, education, and carbohydrate crops were statistically controlled. By contrast, consumption of carbs had a weak but negative correlation with life expectancy.
So meat had a much bigger impact in life expectancy than carbs.
Yes. So that's sort of interesting.
Hey?
It is sort of interesting because, of course, like anytime you think about it, like it's this kind of domineering mentality in the way we talk about nutrition. It's like, oh, like I like red meat, but red meat doesn't like meat. Or It's like, well, I can't have that because it's going to do terrible things for my atherosclerosis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, carbs are probably worse.
Yep. It's kind of like the same lies that tell you that eating fat is just generally bad for you, but it's not true. That's
Depends on the type
insanely well, it's an insanely reductionistic oversimplification of a much more complex thing. But actually, fat itself is not bad for you. It's actually good for you. Kind of like people who used to say that, like, eggs were bad, butter was bad. Like, I'm like, the rule of thumb that I have is like the more natural, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, none of this lab grown meat, Frankenstein meat.
None of this impossible stuff.
By the way, also, this is now the wonderful article you can send to your vegan friends to get them to shut up about telling you, that I'm gonna live longer because I don't need any meat products. I'm like, no, actually, that's the opposite. You're gonna have a nice short life. Good luck with that.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Dang. Harsh words, Denny. Harsh words. But it's saying, it's nothing compared to the harsh words from South Africa.
That is true, and that was one heck of a segue. That was that was a Seamus level, segue. Well done. Yeah.
So here we go. So
you have to give a little background.
I've never seen this before, but the video is titled "Totally Normal White Genocide Rhetoric from South Africa Today."
So this is basically a rally in a massive South African.
It looks like they're all black.
Yes, there's a reason for that, because what he says is downright chilling.
Okay, here we
go. By
go.
the way, it's a little tricky to hear, but go ahead.
Shoot to kill Gamaza, kill the poor, the farmer, kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa, brr, pa, pa. Attention.
By the way, guess who they're talking about when they say kill the poor, the farmer?
I know what they're talking about. What
are they talking about?
Well, they're talking about the white farmers.
The white farmers.
Yeah,
exactly what they're talking about, and they're all in the big stadium, and he's making that little sound.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that?
That's an automatic machine gun.
Oh yeah. Imagine an entire stadium of people, not only dancing and cheering and being all giddy about that, but literally repeating him word for word what he's saying. It's like, kill the white man, kill the farmers. Like, lovely. Again, two things here. One, do you get any very creepy vibes of a Nazi party rally of this kind of nature? I'm like, that's creepy. Secondly, Stephen, I was told on good authority that black people can't be racist. I was told that. What the heck? What the heck's going on? Was that wrong? Is it possible that black people can be racist, Stephen? Is it possible? Is it possible?
Yes. It is possible.
Good to know. Now my entire worldview has now changed. CRT has brainwashed me like a mind slug. It's crazy, actually. It's insane that people actually think that, you're black, you can't be racist. I'm like, way to give someone basically a complete blank slate, a blank check.
To do whatever they want.
To be as racist as they possibly want. It's insane. So that's what's happening in South Africa. But let's talk about the other South African, the most famous South African.
Doing some good.
And he's talking about, who's actually not sharing bad
Not
rhetoric.
calling for mass murder.
Hey,
so Elon shut down Starlink access for Ukrainian drone attack plot against Russian Navy.
Oh, that's lovely.
So Ukrainian plan to target Russian naval vessel in the Black Sea was reportedly abandoned after Elon Musk denied Starlink satellite access to help facilitate the attack. Amid increasing efforts from Kiev to bring the war to the territory of Russia, with explosive-laden drones hitting Moscow twice since the weekend, Tesla chief Elon Musk has reportedly personally intervened to prevent his Starlink satellite internet technology from being used to aid in long-range drone attacks.
Good on him.
According to a report from the New York Times, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, General Valery Zaluzhny, I think that's probably how you pronounce that, recently raised concerns over Musk's influence over the war with the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, after the latest refusal to assist in long-distance offensive strike against a Russian ship off the coast of Crimea. The paper claims, citing unnamed people familiar with the situation, that Musk has restricted access to Starlink on multiple different occasions during the war and that such decisions are the sole discretions of the SpaceX chief. In addition to blocking internet access to facilitate a sea drone attack against the Russian Navy, Starlink has also reportedly been blocked off Ukrainian forces attempting to recapture territory from the Russians in the Donbass region, with geofencing limits being placed around the area. Earlier this year, Mr. Musk said on Twitter, "We are not allowing Starlink to be used for long-range drone strikes." So this is all good. I'm glad that he's taking the stance that his technology will not be used to further the cause of what is now senseless violence, because there's no way that the Ukrainians are ever going to win.
Well, it's not only that, because like when he first brought the Starlink into Ukraine, the whole Ukraine thing, it was to help the
population.
No, because they were being like overrun, and so he wanted to help give them the ability to defend themselves. But now it's being used in the opposite way, to not only to like, you know, be used for attacks and like, you know, for actual intentional violence, but it's also being used to target, like, you know, civilians, which was the whole reason why he wanted to give them the ability to use it in the first place, to defend civilians, not to indiscriminately hurt them. So I mean, the man is I don't know, he's a really decent guy. Like, I hate to say it, like, you know, like he's got some good and bad things he's done or said, but for the most part, I'm like, I hate to say it, like,
it's
Elon
majority of it is good.
Primarily, like, you know, like a decent guy. I'm like, yeah, people are always worried about being burned by Elon Musk, and I'm like, sure, that always exists, but I'm like, until that happens, I'm still a fan of Elon Musk. Well done. Yeah. Well done, man.
Well done, Elon. As we always say, all hail Elon.
But let's talk about somebody who basically is not...
should not be hailed in any way.
Yep. Not at all. Not at all.
She is horrid, and we condemn her.
Yep.
So, Texas cop hunts for a woman who gave birth in a gas station restroom and left her baby for dead as they release security footage of the suspect. Incident dates back to early morning hours of April 2nd at a Shell station in Houston. Customer found the infant in the bathroom at about 4:30 a.m. and called paramedics. Police have yet to find the mother and released the video of the woman they believe to be the suspect entering the gas station an hour earlier.
Jeez, man.
So the incident, yeah. So that's the description. Baby girl had died by the time the Houston Fire Department paramedics got to the scene. Police have yet to find the mother and released the video of the woman they believe to be the suspect entering the gas station before leaving in a white Cadillac. So this is the woman walking in. And then that's her leaving.
There she goes. And leaves basically a baby in the bathroom stall.
Yeah.
Dang. Makes you think about, like, you know, like what kind of birth she must have had. Like the fact that she like didn't make enough noise that people are wondering and all that. But like this is the people are always outraged at these stories of women of whatever character. Doesn't actually matter. See, if they're like what their situation is. Whenever people hear like a woman gives birth and puts the kid in the dumpster, or a woman gives birth and abandons her kid tosses her kid into a ravine or something like that, or like in the water or something like that. People are never. They don't even care what the reason. They're always instantly outraged and have no pity whatsoever on the woman and for how she killed the baby. But this is one of those unique situations where it shows the incredible hypocrisy of the abortion movement, because it's like we were outraged when somebody would like how could somebody do this to their unborn child, or to their born child in this case. Okay. But what's going on? Oh no, I'm just reading this, and this is a fairly interesting little tidbit of information. So this part right here is fairly important. So they don't know whether the baby was stillborn or died after the mother gave birth, but noted that she had been dead for quite some time before she was discovered. And like it was only, according to like the footage and the timeline, it was only an hour
between like the woman going into the bathroom and leaving, and then the baby being found. So the baby was found dead at 4:30, but the baby had been dead for quite some time by that time. And it's like, even if you're born,
Even if you're stillborn, no.
yeah. So it's like, I have serious questions about what happened there.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, well, if the mother didn't want to draw attention to herself, like, did she do some, like, did she, like, they don't say, like, if the mother did something which would have potentially caused the baby to die.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, if she just gave birth and then left, then the baby would have been crying. But that didn't.
But it makes you wonder, like, why, like, obviously, like, it sounds like this must have happened by, like, I don't think somebody would plan to go into a bathroom to give birth. That doesn't make sense. Like, why draw attention to it, right? But more importantly, it's like, how callous do you have to be that you basically give birth
You don't
to
even
something,
say anything.
and then you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna
leave. Yep.
Yeah. Like, it's insane, actually. So
Oh, it's exceptionally dark, but
yeah,
it
shows
paints
how,
a
like,
picture about our society, because
Yeah,
our
it does.
society is one that, like, if this woman, of course, had sought to kill her child a couple months before, then she would have been hailed as a hero of feminism by the left.
Mhm.
But of course, now that the baby is born, and something happens, and then she abandons it, then, suddenly she's a horrible mother. And it's like, well, she did the same thing. Like, she might have done the same thing. Either way, she chose not to be a mother, most likely. And then she abandoned her responsibility, and she didn't even care enough for her kid to give them a proper disposal or burial.
Or, like, like, obviously didn't want. Let's say even the child had a chance, like, it was actually alive and just struggling to live and all that. I mean, like anybody who actually cared about their child would have, like, immediately sought out help.
Yes.
Or, like, authorities or someone to help. The fact that she just left shows that, like, clearly she didn't want this baby, and yeah, it's just really, really sad.
It's very depressing to see the depths of depravity that what we are capable of now as humans due to what our society has encouraged. But we have to move on because we can't talk about this forever.
Okay, let's talk about somebody that's actually worth emulating.
Yes, someone that's actually worth emulating. So, from the Sentinel, it was worth it. Young street preacher arrested at Wisconsin drag event. The preacher said in an interview with the Sentinel, the incident has encouraged him and his fellow church members towards further boldness.
Good job, man.
So, police arrested and detained several young people in Waterton, Wisconsin on Saturday while they were preaching the gospel at a public drag queen event targeted towards children. Video circulated on social media, and we're going to show that video right now. It links to Twitter. Denny's happy.
Nice.
For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, beware lest you be consumed by one another.
Hey, what are you doing?
Just grabs his mic.
What is the problem?
You didn't give him any warning. You just grabbed the mic. No, this is the same one that we had. Yeah, that was in there. It was not out here. What are you doing? You didn't give us any warning. Let it go. You guys have been warned.
They say they say we can speak out here on the sidewalk freely.
You can speak, but there's no amplified.
Nobody told us that. How come there's no amplification? Hey, you guys are acting like thugs, man. You're acting like straight up thugs.
Now it's arresting him
You're taking away my.
for
He has every right to be out here engaging in speech.
wow.
He has every right to be out here engaging in speech. There's cars driving by with their radios playing, that's amplified sound. People are standing out here with radios, that's amplified sound. The ordinance has to do with a decibel gauge. You don't just get to pick and choose which amplification you like and which you don't. That's selective enforcement of the law. That's discrimination on the basis of speech. That's what you all just did. Content-based discrimination based on speech. Walk away.
Dang that guy. He's just
Well
like,
said, man.
Boom, boom, boom. Just dropping straight fire.
Boom, boom, boom. He's got a point. Like what it's not illegal. Okay, I have yet to hear of a place where it's actually illegal to use amplification in a public space. What I have heard is there are official limits on how loud your amplification device can be, but in order to make that like actual claim and to actually stop somebody from preaching, you have to have a meter. You can't just kind of say like, well, I just think it's too loud. It's like, I think you have to have a meter. So again, the problem here is the same problem you have in Vancouver, same problem you have in a lot of these places, is that there's the truth, and then there's the truth. The truth that they tell you is that we were trying to keep people safe and trying to uphold the law, but then the truth is that they don't like people criticizing the drag movement, and so they pick any excuse, any justification, any rationale to silence those who speak against it. So that's really what's going on here. At least that seems to be the most plausible explanation of what's going on here. The fact that they're going after this kid and just arresting him. But good on him for standing up, man. Well done, kid.
What is going on?
I don't know what's going on.
Something is like disrupting the. Like I can't open up the window.
Oh.
Okay, I can open up that. But apparently that's blocked. Hold on, this is very weird. Like there's a black screen on the live stream.
Yeah, I see that.
And I can't. Like it just suddenly shut off, and I can't turn it back on. Maybe I'll kill this. Maybe I'll kill Brave and then reboot it.
Okay.
And I lost all my tabs.
All of them?
All of them.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Okay, hang on. I'll see if I can. I will try and fix this. This is weird.
When you restart Brave, it usually gives you the option.
It usually does, yes. So I will see if I can fix this by like minimizing everything and like try and reopen it.
Technical issues.
Nope. So fun stuff. So I guess this is just how we're gonna I'm gonna open up a new tab of Brave, and then you're gonna tell me what the next story is.
Yes, sure.
And then that's just the way it's gonna have to open.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully that works. See, yeah, now I have the new tab open. So
oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, so I can.
You got the Daily Mail, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Okay, so I'll search through and find that. There it is. And open on the wrong Brave tab. Everything is going wrong today.
Everything is
Everything is awful.
Everything is awful.
There we go. Okay, so now we are okay. I don't know what happened. It's weird.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, just suddenly, like, as soon as we started playing that video, like, video feed cut off, and I could not bring it back.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, that's super weird. Anyways, Neil deGrasse Tyson says biology is insufficient at explaining gender ideology, and teen detransition activist Chloe Cole rips his claims. So, Cole, who is actively opposes gender affirming care for minors after transitioning herself, called out Tyson in a video she posted on Twitter on Tuesday. You're using 1950s gender stereotypes for an ideology that leads to the sterilization and mastectomies of 15-year-old girls who just don't fit in.
Oh boy.
So famous detransitioner and activist Chloe Cole slammed Neil deGrasse Tyson after he published a TikTok insisting biology is insufficient in explaining gender ideology. So let's just check out this TikTok.
Okay.
All right, that's not the video. That was a link to Daily Mail stories about TikTok. So,
what is the actual link?
Here it is.
Apparently, the XXXY chromosomes
Sounds about
are
right.
insufficient.
You're gonna have to share the video
Because
on,
when we
share your
wake
screen
up in
on,
the morning,
Discord.
we
sorry.
No worries. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. So we can actually listen to what we're doing.
exaggerate whatever feature we want to portray the gender of our choice.
How about we stop confusing basic human biology with cosmetics? Like, what a weird jump. If I don't wear makeup most days. If I leave the house without makeup on, does that make me like 70% male?
Somewhere, I think I read that the United States was a land where we have the pursuit of happiness.
If it was only truly about aesthetics, nobody would care. It's my business because you're using 1950s gender stereotypes to justify an ideology that leads to the sterilization and mastectomies of 15-year-old girls who just don't fit in. Girls like me.
Suppose no matter my chromosomes, today I feel 80% female, 20% male. I'm gonna put on makeup. I'm gonna do that. Tomorrow I might feel 80% male.
I wonder what his gender was when you recorded this. Like, he doesn't have a muscle shirt on, right? No spray tan, no falsies. It's probably like 50% male in this.
I'll remove the makeup and I'll wear a muscle shirt. Why do you care? What business is
Why do
it
you
of
care?
yours
Such
to
a common
require
report.
that I fulfill your inability to think of gender on a spectrum?
Because the only thing that you've established in this video is that men wear trousers and tank tops, but women, they wear lipstick and dresses. The idea that people can be percentages of either male or female just further reinforces the fact that biological sex is a binary. There's only two.
Mm-hmm.
There may only be two sexes, but there are an infinite number of personalities. I mean, it really doesn't take a degree in astrophysics to understand that.
Well, and of course, something that she doesn't mention is that he's like, oh, like, why do you care so much? Like, what does it take out of you to acknowledge that, like, gender is on a spectrum? It's like, well, that's like asking somebody. It's like, what does it take out of you to acknowledge that the sky is pink? It's like, well, it takes a lot out of me if you're saying that I have to accommodate you in accepting something that is inherently false. When you're demanding that someone believe that something is false, that's not just saying, oh, it's like, it doesn't affect you in any way. Like, you should just be letting them live their lives. And it's like, well, letting them live their lives is one thing, but if they're saying that we have to accept them and that we have to use their personal pronouns and we have to accept and we have to speak to them in a way that accepts that is affirming of their gender preference, then that is forcing us, and that is forcing compliance to something that is inherently false.
Well,
and that is a big ask.
It's the idea that, like, how does it like affect you? I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, how can people say that with a straight face? Like, how can people say that with a straight face? It's like, there's there are places now in all over the States and Canada where you can be legally charged, and, like, face major penalties for not using the right pronouns. So that affects people. There's people who are now going into, like, female spaces, including change rooms. That affects people. There's like men taking away, like, opportunities from women in female sports and hurting women in female sports. That affects people. Like, the idea that they can actually say, like, oh, this doesn't affect you. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? The whole movement is aggressive in nature. They're like, it's not about, like, inclusion and tolerance. It's actually the most intolerant movement we've had in the last, like, 50 years. It's insanely intolerant. They do not tolerate anybody who doesn't agree with them. And it's just brutal. So good on her, because, like, this is the one thing, like, is it Chloe? Yeah, Chloe. Chloe is part of one of the most incredible, groups that completely and totally puts a giant black eye on the trans movement. The whole, you've heard, Stephen, what they always say, oh, you're trying to erase trans people, and you're trying to eradicate us and pretend we don't exist, right? And yet, the trans movement and everyone who supports it, they actively, and intentionally try to pretend and aggressively deny that detransitioners exist. And it's so incredibly, so incredibly evil in how they, not only that they do it, but how they do it. They literally, they're horribly harsh and cruel to detransitioners. It's insane that people actually buy this nonsense. They're on the one hand, they claim that you're if you don't agree with me, you're trying to pretend like trans people don't exist. You're trying to pretend we're invisible, or get rid of our existence. At the same time that they do it themselves, it's insane to me that people buy this kind of crap. But so glad that there's people like Chloe that are fighting back and actually are trying to stop them from doing the same thing that they're doing to that they did to her. And Neil deGrasse Tyson is no hero. He's just doing it because it's popular and it gets him a lot of likes and a lot of support. It's like he's not brave. He's a coward, and he's self-righteous coward.
Yep.
But speaking of cowardice, let's talk about what Facebook has now admitted.
So, we shouldn't have done it. Facebook exec admitted they censored for Biden regime. So, in yesterday's Facebook Files release, it came out that Facebook, in its desperation to cool down the White House apes, promised to reduce traffic to Carlson's video by 50% while it was in the queue to be fact-checked. So, apart from the obvious, why is this insane? Because the White House fumed and outlets like the Washington Post excoriated Carson for just asking questions, shtick. Turned out he was asking the right questions. Why, if the vaccine worked, Anthony Fauci telling people they shouldn't attend medium to large gatherings or remove masks? If vaccines work, Carlson asked, why are vaccinated people still banned from living normal lives? Similarly, why was Justin Trudeau saying vaccination on its own isn't enough to keep us safe? If the shot worked, maybe Carlson speculated the vaccine doesn't work. These were obvious and appropriate questions, but officials and journalists alike killed Carlson for asking them anyway. Of course, killed metaphorically. YouTube is still packed with Tucker disinfo derp videos that are themselves actually wrong. So this is, and now this video, which tries to debunk Carlson but is wrong.
As they always do. They're basically there's so many like disingenuous hit organizations, from Now This to Media Matters to there's one in Canada too. That
BuzzFeed.
No, it's intentionally. It's an organization that their entire reason for existence is to basically try to do hit pieces and discredit psyops against conservatives.
Lovely.
I forget what they're called, but they're here in Canada too, and they're very aggressive.
Fun.
But again, this is we're getting a nonstop progression of confirming. Like the fact that Facebook was purposely censoring, and that the government was intentionally working hand in glove with Facebook to censor these things, is pretty undeniable at this point. Like my coworker still believes he has such an incredible confidence that Facebook and the American government and the DOJ and the FBI, that they're always acting in good faith and that we can trust them completely. I'm just like, you have an insane amount of naivety.
Yeah,
and
an immense amount of faith.
Yes, an immense amount of faith that these organizations are always working in good faith. This is the kind of belief system that I think can only exist among very, very hardcore right left wing ideologues, because you have to believe that, because the system works in your favor, so of course you're going to like the system. The second the system stops working in your favor, you're going to hate the system.
Yeah.
So it's insane. But yeah, Facebook, it just we already know that Twitter was already very much working at the behest of the American government, and like or Twitter was, and then Facebook is pretty much right there with them.
Yep.
So yeah, it's crazy, but basically, yeah, it's undeniable.
Little side note about Facebook and Twitter.
What?
Threads has so far, I believe, lost more than half its users.
I heard about that.
So, in your face, Zuck. You are a cuck.
Oh, you suck.
Okay, that too.
Kind of works.
Anyways, let's continue on.
I said Zuck. Like, he
Yes.
sucks.
Yes, sure.
Yes, it works.
So let's move on to other
else that
things. Other
Something else
self owns aside from Threads.
Yeah. Take us into the NBC news
So
story.
NBC
this was covered,
inside the
this
online world. Yep. Please.
This was covered by Matt Walsh today. And by the way, the whole idea is that they basically inadvertently proved why the in trying to prove that like transitioning race was not a thing. They basically like
prove that transitioning gender is not a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, take us into it.
So inside the online world of people who think they can change their race, practitioners of race change to another, or RCTA, report to be able to manifest physical changes in their appearance and even their genetics to truly become a different race. Since before she hit double digits, Alyssa, 15, says she has felt a special connection with Japan. The high school student who asked to be anonymous for fear of being doxxed online was born in Ukraine and lives in Maryland. But she now goes by Japanese name Mayuki, and listens to subliminals that promise she will wake up and be Japanese. So far, she believes that by listening to YouTube videos with lo-fi music and photos of East Asian facial features, while she sleeps, her vision has cleared, her eyelids have become smaller, and her hair is just a bit darker. Practitioners of what they call race change to another, RCTA, purport to be able to manifest physical changes in their appearance and even their genetics to become a different race. They tune into subliminal videos and claim they can give them East Asian appearance or Korean DNA. Experts underscore that it's simply impossible to change your race. It's just belief.
Sorry, we have to say experts with quotation marks, because that's always the way that they do it. It's like experts, hence we can't be wrong. We have experts. Yes.
It's just belief, said Jamie Cohen, an assistant professor of cultural and media studies at Queen College City, University of New York. It doesn't ever really work. It's not ever really doing anything, but they have convinced themselves that it works because there are other people who've convinced themselves as well.
Wow, okay, stop for a second. Think about that.
Yep.
They think it works because other people say it works. Where have I heard that before? Where have I heard that logic and that line of reasoning before? I don't know. Maybe we just keep going and we'll figure out this mystery somehow.
So, though they do not constitute a full-blown trend, the number of racial subliminal creators popped up on YouTube in recent years, with videos racking up an average of over 500,000 views apiece. On TikTok, dozens of accounts have emerged in recent weeks, sharing similar goals and aesthetics, and documenting what people describe as their race-changing journey.
Oh, funny. Where have I heard this kind of journey before? 300 days, 365 days of being a woman. Or I don't know. I've heard that somewhere.
Just a little bit.
It's weird.
So, media experts point to the potential dark side of the exotization. It's supposed to be exotics. I know it's a reference to exoticization.
Yeah.
That is a very hard, complicated word to pronounce. Saying it could be a form of modern yellowface or the act of non-Asian peoples making their appearance more Asian-like. Yes, just like certain things could be modern woman face.
It's basically like, what do you call it? Cultural appropriation. This is racial appropriation.
Yeah.
Basically.
Oh, yeah.
But like one of the arguments I think they make is that okay, so right here it says right before it says race is a cunt, it says there's also the underbelly of that terrible writing. The underbelly where we want to be careful, she said, because there's always problems around fetishization or objectification that East Asian cultures have always been subjected to, meaning being revered for these kinds of exotic characteristics but not being fully seen. In other words, they're worried about making it a fetish.
Mm-hmm.
It is funny because in the trans community, there's an entire group of men who transition supposedly to different gender, because they find it like what's it
They
called
find themselves
when they
attractive.
find themselves attractive?
Oh, what's the word for it? Autogynephilia?
Autogynephilia. There's an entire segment of trans men, or sorry, trans women, men who become women, who do it because they find themselves erotically aroused at seeing themselves as women. And by the way, that's never ever criticized. That they don't even try to hide that. That is a thing that happens. It's a very large segment of the male to female community, and they just pretend they just pass it off as no big deal. And yet here they're saying that well, we can't do that because they're making a fetish about being Asian, because they find they get some kind of a thrill or some kind of a pleasure from looking like they're Asian. It's like funny how that logic falls apart in the trans stuff and all that.
Yeah. Well, then it goes on to something really stupid. Experts agree race is not genetic.
What?
That's that deserves the gif of, that's the stupidest thing I've heard all week. Because, oh my gosh, are you serious?
Yeah.
Of course it is. Of course it's genetic. That's why when it's like, oh yeah, I'm white. Why? Because I have white parents. Danny is Mexican because he has Mexican parents.
Go figure how that works. But read that second part that they put in there.
They contend that even though race is a cultural construct, it's impossible to change your race because the systemic inequalities inherent to being born into a certain race.
In other words, it's like it's impossible to become another race because we don't want to give you that out of leaving the white oppressor class and joining the victim class of being black. We don't want to give you that out, and we definitely don't want to encourage black people from joining another race and becoming white or something like that.
This next two paragraphs. David Freund, a historian of race and politics and associate professor at the University of Maryland, College Park, corroborates the idea that biological race does not exist. What we know today as race is a combination of inherited characteristics and cultural traditions. Yes, that's the difference between race and culture.
That's right.
Cultural traditions passed down through generations, he said. In addition, he said the modern concept of race is inseparable from the systemic racial hierarchy hundreds of years in the making. Simply put, changing races is not possible because biological races themselves are not real.
And so if they're not real...
Oh boy, that is a massive level of denialism.
Oh my gosh. It's
this
so
is just beyond parody levels of stupid.
But Steven, he's an expert.
Oh,
he went to University of Maryland College. I mean, you basically have to go to university to be this stupid.
Oh yeah,
you really do. Yeah, it's you come out of what was it Candace Owens says, you have to go to university to basically come out stupider than when you went in.
Yeah,
it's crazy. But their arguments are not even logical. It's wait, well, that race isn't even a thing. It's not. It just exists in our imagination. So why, if that is true, let's just assume that premise is true. That only reinforces the fact that they can just swap races on a whim. Because if it's just like a social construct, then there's nothing to stop them from doing it. And of course, they do not see how they're basically debunking the entire concept of transgenderism. Because the idea, oh, you can't change genetics because people aren't that way because of genetics. It's okay, so then how does that work with women? Because you're claiming that it's not genetics, that it's your feelings. I'm okay, so that is not genetics. So that if you apply that to transgenderism, that also doesn't work. You've basically proven that that argument doesn't work in transgenderism. And then secondly, if women are historically here's what do they say specifically? A race is a combination of inherited characteristics. No, sorry. It's a concept of race is inseparable from the systemic racial hierarchy hundreds of years in the making. In other words, you cannot become another race because the systemic case system that we've created, we don't want you to breach that. It's like, okay, but don't you always claim that women are oppressed and victimized, and that they're an underclass, but you're allowing men to become part of the underclass? So you see how like all of these things completely undercut their entire argument. Like the whole article is just an absolute gong show of complete and total embarrassment yourself. Like I recommend that you go read the whole thing. But yeah, they basically completely just prove that that they cannot be logically consistent. And again, that's the point. They're not trying to be logically consistent. To them, the truth is basically whatever is convenient for their chosen narrative at the time.
Yep.
They don't care about being logically consistent.
No, they never cared.
No, and speaking of that, like being
cared.
logically consistent, Steven,
let's talk
tell us about what happened in Canada and how this is like not in any way logically consistent.
Canadian transgender woman denied euthanasia request over post-surgical pain and regret. One transgender individual has been legally euthanized because of profound regret over transition, and the killing took place in Belgium 10 years ago. From my piece on the tragedy at NRO, quoting the Daily Mail story about the case, in the hours before his death, he told Belgium's Het Laatste, I was ready to celebrate my new birth, but when I looked in the mirror, I was disgusted with myself. My new breasts did not match my expectations, my new penis, my new breasts, and my new penis.
Isn't that lovely?
Okay.
Yeah, this is a very bizarre, almost like a.
I did not want to be a monster. No, there's a similar story out of Canada. A trans woman named Lois Cardinal wants to be euthanized because of terrible pain being experienced from and deep remorse over having been transitioned surgically. The Indigenous trans woman has slammed Canada's healthcare system for rejecting his euthanasia request, despite the pain he endures from a surgically built vagina. In the social media post, Lois Cardinal, self-proclaimed sterilized First Nations post-op transsexual, said regret over his medical transition led him to apply for a lethal injection in January. Cardinal, who lives on a native reserve near St. Paul, Alberta, so just like up the road from us, posted her medical records from the request online this week to draw attention to radical gender ideology. The surgery sounds just awful. I'm taking this psychological burden on me if I'm not able to access proper medical care. I don't want to continue to do this. Cardinal underwent a vaginoplasty in 2009 but developed complications and quickly regretted the procedure. He told DailyMail.com that he feels constant pressure, pain, and discomfort now, many years after the surgery. The difficult procedure involved inverting the penis into a new vagina. Most recipients suffer pain and discomfort afterwards, according to a recent study from the University of Florida.
It's pretty
like that's really ghastly.
I hear so many stories about people who went through these, like I call them Frankenstein surgeries.
Yeah,
because they're not in any way these are not surgeries where they're healing something. They're trying to basically create a whole lot of either permanent wounds, because remember, if it's a vaginoplasty like Josh Jennings, they have to constantly
open the wound.
Open the wound and keep it open because the body's trying to heal itself, but you're basically forcing the body to.
We think back to the mother of Jazz Jennings and how horrible that person was. And it was
they're Frankenstein surgeries. But here's the interesting thing: you and I covered that really ghastly ad from I forget what it's like, a clothing brand. Yeah, what's it?
Simon's.
Okay. Simon's made an ad about a Canadian woman who basically wanted to basically get made to kill herself, and the whole thing was like it was put in this very flowery sounding. Everything is beautiful, everything's beauty and all that, and then you find out later from people that knew her from statements that she had made earlier that she actually didn't want to die. She chose to die because the Canadian government refused to help pay for or treat her chronic condition. In other words, she was denied the ability to have actual medical support for her chronic condition. And so she's like, well, if I'm not going to get any support, the only option I'm being really left with is to end it all. And so they're basically, and so that was horrifying. But think about that. What was her problem? Chronic pain. She's in chronic pain, and she couldn't like stand the idea of like going on, right? But what is this person here? This person that's trying to claim made.
Yep.
Oh, chronic pain, like chronic terrible pain that just doesn't go away, and they just don't want to live anymore. But what happened is that they got rejected. So the Canadian medical and the doctors involved, they basically said like, oh, sorry, you don't qualify, which is basically a subjective decision that they made. Any guesses as to why they made that decision, Stephen?
I'm trying to sort out like the next articles. So
no. Sorry. I'll show you where it says on. Finish with. Okay. So right after the part that says the surgery sounds just awful.
Yeah.
It says here, I find it telling that we don't hear too much about severe and chronic post-surgical complication debates over gender-affirming care. That's a reason why the medical conscience law should apply in this area. Precision surgery should not be viewed as a civil right, only because they have the potential to cause so much harm to the patient. But here's what Canadian euthanasia license is so liberal, one would think Cardinal would qualify to be killed. After all, the pain and despair caused by the surgery are long-standing, as is Cardinal's regret. But the doctor refused, stating that there remain treatment options that could ameliorate Cardinal's suffering. But that is almost always the case with euthanasia cases. And indeed, Canadian law doesn't require those who want to be killed to access such care. To the contrary, irremediable suffering is based on a patient's perspective, not on the unavailability of palliative or treatment interventions. Indeed, the Canadian Supreme Court's ruling that conjured euthanasia as a constitutional right expressly stated that the term that includes psychological pain, disability, and suffering that is deemed irremediable only because alleviating treatment is refused by the patient. In other words, even if you have access to treatment that make the pain go away, that is not enough. But if the patient says, you know what, even though I have options, I don't feel like having those options, they still give you euthanasia. So what people have said, and I agree with them, is that the only rational reason why they would have denied this person treatment is because it's very inconvenient for the leftist argument that transgenderism is beautiful and perfect and can never lead to any like negative outcomes. Mm-hmm. So it seems like this person was given pretty much like a legally free reign to have as many gender surgeries as possible, and then we can't let you kill yourself because that's very inconvenient for our messaging about our narrative. Yep. So this story is such an incredible, such an obvious case of a completely obvious double standard.
Yep.
Incredibly obvious that the liberal governments in this country are in like basically
they have trying a very clear agenda.
Yeah, super obvious. Barely it's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes us into, let's go into the American stories and what happened with Trump and the media and justice circus.
Yeah. So breaking news from Reuters: Trump faces federal charges for efforts to overturn 2020 election. So Trump.
That title is so incredibly
disingenuous. Yep.
So
Trump was indicted on Tuesday for his wide-ranging attempts to overturn or at least question the 2020 election, the third time in 4 months the United States president has been criminally charged, even as he campaigns to regain the presidency next year. The 4-count, 45-page indictment charges Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States by preventing Congress to certify Democrat Joe Biden's victory and to deprive voters of the right to a fair election. Then President Trump pushed fraud claims he knew to be untrue, pressured state and federal officials, including Vice President Mike Pence, to alter the results, and finally incited a violent assault on the U.S. Capitol in desperate attempt to undermine the American democracy and cling to power. Prosecutors said Trump was ordered to make an initial appearance. On Thursday, the case has been assigned to the United States District Judge Tanya Chutkan, who was appointed by Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama. The charges stem from the special counsel Jack Smith's sprawling investigation into allegations Trump sought to reverse his loss to Biden. Despite a dizzying and growing array of legal troubles, Trump has solidified his status as the frontrunner of the Republican presidential nomination, according to public opinion polls. Weeks of assertion the election has been stolen, culminating in a fiery Trump speech on January 6th, as Congress meant to certify the results soon after his supporters stormed the United States Capitol in a bid to stop Congress from formalizing Biden's victory. This, of course, is a incorrect timeline, as the storming of the Capitol was during his speech.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard to inspire and incite people who are several miles away and can't hear you.
Hey, don't that this is the liberal, the left wing approach. Don't get all bogged down with details.
Yeah.
It's more important to be morally correct than factually correct.
Yeah.
As some wise Democratic woman,
wise AOC moment.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Which, yeah, that will never makes AOC will never have a wise moment. I don't think.
I don't think it's possible.
No.
Latina
So,
Barbie.
but this is kind of just more on top of it's just pouring fuel on the fire of things which we've been pointing out for a long time, and the Gateway Pundit actually kind of summarizes it really well. Larry Kudlow goes there, releases timeline of Biden's DOJ charming Trump immediately after Joe Biden is caught in nefarious criminal acts. So let's just watch this video. Is it the video down here? There it is. Yeah. So let's just watch. This is it. It's important.
A target letter from the special counsel's office in the middle of July, so a couple of weeks ago. Then we also know that last Thursday, the former president's legal team met with the special counsel. So all of this was sort of leading to this moment where we are potentially going to see the former President Trump be indicted yet again by the special counsel. Larry?
I got a thought. I appreciate the report very much. I just have a thought. Yeah. One reason that this is coming out today is because former Hunter Biden best friend forever, Devin Archer, did his deposition yesterday and talked about the Hunter family brand, which is an influence peddling brand. Just hang on a second. You know, they do this every time something bad happens. They come up with another indictment. March 16th, Jamie Comer reveals Biden's family payments. Then a few weeks later, April 4th, Trump's New York criminal indictment. That was the Alvin Bragg fiasco. Then later in the spring, June 8th, Republican views Biden's bribery 1023 form. Okay, the GOP unleashed that. The next day on the 9th, we had Trump's classified documents indictment about Mar-a-Lago. In the summertime, just a few days ago, July 26th, we get the Hunter plea deal blows up in Wilmington, Delaware. And guess what? All of a sudden, Trump has to face additional charges from Jack Smith about covering up tapes and having the maintenance guy. I mean, come on. Yesterday's deposition was very devastating for the Bidens. So today, all of a sudden, lo and behold, they're going to come up with some make-up indictment for January 6th that will hold absolutely no legal water. I guarantee it. Anyway, that's my hypothesis. That's my hypothesis.
I think you speak to something that is a concern for not only Republican lawmakers, but Republican voters. And that's certainly going to be a concern, as you know, the president, former president, alluded to in his statement that this is timed with the election cycle.
Yes, weaponization.
So
this is the weaponization of indictments. It's crazy. Grady Trimble, thank you, buddy.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
he's totally correct.
He forgot to add like a couple of things. Like, do you notice how Timcast IRL, they constantly talk about like the alien, like stories, right? It's like, oh my gosh, we're confessing aliens exist and all that kind of stuff immediately after some major scandal, erupts or something like that. What was the other one? There was like the whole submarine thing. Remember, like the submarine that was the people that went down in that submarine and died or something like that, and the big search and all that. That came on the throes again of another major scandal that was erupting, and they unleashed that as a way of distracting people like crazy. The balloon stories again. They also came at a very suspicious time. So I mean, this has been happening so much that it's becoming almost predictable. Like you can almost call it, be like, oh, here's a big revelation. What are they going to come up with now? What's the next distraction they're going to come up with to try to distract people from the real scandal, which is basically that Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and his government is the most corrupt and nefarious government in like American history. Like legitimately, these guys are so incredibly crooked. They're I don't think there is a presidency before him who is anywhere near as corrupt as Joe Biden and his administration has been. It's unbelievably corrupt. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's up there, right?
Crazy. It's
Okay. But like here, like let's go to the Fox. Like speaking of Fox News, go to the Fox News story about the Trump indictment, because here's something I've been hearing a lot, and I'm like, it's kind of hard to like really parse it out. But I kind of gotten the impression that while all the other legal attacks against Trump, they're meant to like to eat into his treasury, so he can't campaign as effectively, and also completely and totally sidetrack him from campaigning by having to be in court. So I was like, those are the reasons for those. I was under the impression that this one was going to be like the indictment about January 6th, that this one had the potential of making him ineligible to run, right?
Yeah.
Like, am I right on that, or did I miss?
Like that was highlighted by several people. Yeah.
Yes.
Including
and so
I think it was Ben Shapiro highlighted it.
Yes.
Timcast News highlighted it.
They did, yeah.
And then of course like CNN, MSNBC were riding fairly heavily on it.
Yeah, so here's why I'm interested to see what these guys say. This is legal experts Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, and the whole idea of like the basic idea is that the Democrats have a bedtime story that the Trump indictment will basically make him ineligible. And here's what they say.
So, anyways, Fox News correspondent David Spunt reported on the 5 that Trump has been indicted on 4 counts: conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. What? That's basically like, because it's like, okay, obstruct an official proceeding. It's like, all right, well that's the first crime, and then the second crime is you were obstructing an attempt. You were obstructing the other crime. It's like, what?
It's like murder and like a murder, you know?
Well, but it's not even a murder. It's like, oh, you're being charged with murder, but you're also being charged with attempting to obstruct murder. And it's like, what? How does that make sense?
Yeah. Would that actually be like trying to stop the actual crime from happening?
Yes.
In other words, that would actually be like a good thing, not a charge.
It would be cancelable. It was like cancel each other out.
This is the clown show that they're pulling on here. So, oh my god.
And then, of course, conspiracy against rights. Turley told the 5, and Special Counsel Jack Smith might be yielding to his weakness in the indictment. So Smith may be stretching the law a little bit. That's why they're going to be looking at things like witness tampering to see how much new evidence he has. You'll notice that it's not being discussed in all these conspiracy for indictment or seditious conspiracy. He noted 2 claims were paramount in Adam Schiff's second impeachment proceedings against Trump. There were claims the Democrats said were lead pipe cinches, where the evidence was absolutely clear. He said they do not appear thus far to be in this indictment, but we'll have to see. Jack Smith has a reputation for stretching criminal statutes beyond the breaking point. He went after former Republican Governor Bob McDonnell in Virginia to secure a conviction there. He was unanimously overturned because he stretched the law too far. Democrats and Trump critics have long accused the former president of urging supporters to forcibly overturn the election by storming the Capitol. Trump has repeatedly emphasized that he urged supporters who marched to peacefully demonstrate on Capitol Hill. Yep. Jesse Waters told Turley the Smith's indictment feels like a transcript of an MSNBC show and expressed incredulity that appears to litigate claims of election fraud in 2020 in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, and Michigan. Waters quipped the Democrats might not want to go back to the road of defending the integrity of the election system in Philadelphia. He's right.
But here's what he says. He says that Democrats are unlikely to see Trump being declared ineligible for office with the latest indictment. Democrats have been playing with this for years with the 14th Amendment and it claims of disqualification. It's sort of a story you tell your kids at night if you're a Democratic household, so they'll sleep. But I got to tell you, I'm highly skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
So why does he say one word? The Electoral Count Act of 1887.
So he just says that it wouldn't prevent him from running and it wouldn't prevent him from pardoning himself.
So essentially, like what he's saying here is like there's like this is based on a theory, not precedent. Okay, so he's like he says, McCarthy referenced how some Trump acolytes pressed him on a theory.
Oh, I get what they're trying to do.
What are they trying to do?
So they're trying to say that yes, they're like it's possible. It's like if you've got evidence that Trump committed incitement, then charge him with incitement. But of course, I can say as someone who actually successfully prosecuted a seditious conspiracy case that they don't have a prayer in a case like that. He's essentially saying that because in a fair system that Trump would not be found guilty of seditious conspiracy, that would not prevent him from running.
Okay.
But the problem is, of course, by those who are objective, like people looking in, that
properly
this is being tried in Washington, D.C.
Which,
they would find Trump guilty of committing murder, even though it's clearly that he hasn't done anything.
they'd find Trump like guilty of of animals for petting a kitten.
Yeah,
that's basically like how malicious these people are.
Actually. Oh yeah, and they'll go after him for anything.
But it's again the whole what was the New York attorney general, like the guy Bragg, okay? They basically listen to that whole indictment that they came up with. Everyone said this is such a complete and total legal, on a left field theory that they're like, what is he doing? Like this became almost like he's inventing brand new ways of changing the law that are completely untested, totally out of left field, and people somehow think that this is this is legitimate. It's like, okay. But Jack Smith is doing the same thing. And again, looking back at the timing of it, you're like, okay, the timing of it is incredibly suspect. If he's building this massive case, what are the chances that he launches this indictment the day after one of the most damning,
testimonies on Capitol Hill?
On Capitol Hill. So let's actually cover that, because this is actually legitimate.
Oh yeah, okay. I have to find
Axios story about Joe Biden.
Oh yeah, that was the one that I posted.
Yes, you did.
Okay, let me find it. There it is.
Because this was the big story from yesterday. This is the one that it literally blew apart a million things that people have been saying about the Hunter Biden thing. Okay, so yeah, you found it.
Yeah, I just got to move it into the proper position.
Get in there, man.
Okay, so. From Axios. Hunter Biden associate describes illusion of access. So former Hunter Biden associate told Congress that Hunter sold the illusion of access by putting his father on speakerphone with business partners and then Vice President Biden. Never talk shop. According to Republican Dan Goldman, a source familiar with the testimony, why it matters top Republicans have called for an impeachment inquiry into President Biden ahead of Devin Archer's closed-door testimony on Monday, suggested that he boosted their case, while Democrats said there was no smoking gun tying Biden to his son's business entanglements.
Liars, all of them.
Archer, who was convicted of fraud in 2018, testified that Hunter put his father on the phone with friends and business associates roughly 20 times over the 10 years. Archer repeated over and over again that President Biden never discussed any business dealings or interests with Hunter or anyone else, Goldman told reporters after an hour-long transcribed interview. Republicans cast doubt on the claim that Biden simply exchanged niceties during the phone calls. They focused on Archer's testimony that embattled Ukrainian gas company Burisma wanted Hunter on his board for the family brand. There was one big thing. So here, this was a really important part. So the intrigue. Archer also testified that Burisma believed effort to oust Ukrainian Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin were bad for Ukrainian energy company, according to Goldman. So that's very important, because basically the excuse from the Barack Obama regime was to be like, oh no, everybody wanted to fire Viktor Shokin. It's like, well, but Hunter Biden and Burisma were telling Joe Biden over and over and over again, you need to fire him, you need to fire him, you need to fire him. And then he, of course, tied it to aid, which is a quid pro quo, especially when your son, and you know that your son is working for a company that's being investigated by Viktor Shokin. Like, this is clear and obvious corruption, no doubt. And of course, this runs counter to Republican suggestions over the years that Biden pushed for Shokin's firing, which he did. So this doesn't run counter.
It's incredibly obvious.
Yeah. So, like, Biden admitted on camera that he pushed for Shokin's firing.
Yeah.
He said, "Oh yeah, like you're not getting the $1 billion." It's like, you can't do that. You're not the president. It's like, well, call him up. I'm leaving in 6 hours. If I don't get the money, if I don't have word or receipt that he's fired, then you're not going to get the money. And he's like, son of a bee. Within 6 hours, he got fired. They got the money. It's like, oh, well, that's suspicious and questionable and wrong.
Super crazy, eh?
Super crazy, super criminal.
Yes. The problem here is like, okay, so there's a couple of things. Okay, who's David Archer? David Archer used to be...
Devin Archer was Hunter Biden's business associate. He is also the son-in-law of John Kerry.
Yes. Now, Devin Archer, like, people have been asking, like, why would he testify against Joe Biden and Hunter Biden in this whole situation? And I think Dan Bongino really put it well. He's like, because he has a vested interest. Yeah. He's the only one being charged. He basically got screwed by the Bidens. He got thrown under the bus. And he's like, oh, is that how it's going to be? Well,
I'm going to... Oh, Hunter got a sweetheart. What do I get?
Yeah.
Nothing.
And he basically got completely and totally, like, like railroaded. So he's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done protecting you. So he basically went to testify. There's even a story in some other, like, outlets basically saying that the Biden administration tried, like, unsuccessfully, and of course they deny it. They tried to try to see if they can arrest him before he can testify.
No. This is what happened. They didn't try and arrest him. Devin Archer request to turn himself in.
Yeah.
They basically, like, the DOJ sent a letter to his... Biden's DOJ does an 11th hour U-turn as it's forced to... They back down and say it did not call for Devin Archer to be jailed before testimony today. So they sent a letter clarifying that they did not want to see him arrested in prison before his anticipated congressional testimony. So, what did they initially say? Archer... There was a statement by it. Or here it is.
You got it?
Oh no, this is the follow-up.
Okay.
Where was the original letter? The original letter was basically like, oh, like, when are you submitting yourself and, like, going to prison? It's like, we will expect you to turn yourself in at, like, as soon as possible, and if not, then we will potentially come and get you.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things here. Like, the media keeps trying to pretend, like, oh, this is a nothing burger. Oh, there's no evidence. This is their talking point right now. No evidence. Except they have boatloads of evidence from different places, from emails to SARS. Do you know what SARS are, Stephen? Suspicious activity reports.
Yep.
You heard of all this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, there are like hundreds, like I think 150 suspicious activity reports from various banks, all about like Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, which is insane because like a bank it's required by law to submit these if there's some seriously shady behavior that's done by these people. So like they have like hundreds of like over 100 suspicious activity reports against them.
Yeah.
They have a massive amount of shell companies created not long after they started to do this racketeering effort. And here's a big thing. They're saying that they're just like Joe Biden just called to talk about the weather. Right? That's their whole thing. Like, oh, it's a totally innocent call. But here's the thing. And I think Dan Bongino, I'll give credit. Dan Bongino helped me understand how this works.
Yeah.
Influence peddling, how it works is you basically just have to prove to the people that you're selling the influence to that you have access to the person. It doesn't even require the person to actually be heavily involved. It gives them plausible deniability. But Hunter Biden putting his dad on speakerphone in front of these like major players that they're trying to do business with is influence peddling itself. That is enough. The fact that he can prove to them that he has instant access to Joe Biden is the reason why it's influence peddling.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need the additional, they talked about business. No, because the whole way it works is Hunter Biden is a proxy.
Yep.
Hunter Biden does the dirty work
He's a
so
big
that
guy.
Joe Biden can kind of have the plausible deniability.
He can exist behind the scenes.
Exactly. This is so obvious. This is what the mafia used to do. This is what the Italian mafia used to do in New York, in all throughout history. The big boss wouldn't go and do the dirty work. He wouldn't go in and do it himself. He would send somebody in as his agent to do the dirty work on his behalf. Hence everything to do with Hunter Biden.
Tim Pool
obvious.
actually had a really great way of referring to it. He said it'd be like the mafia boss sending his son to do a job that he's not qualified for. And then the son basically telling the henchman to be like, well, I'm in charge of this operation. And they're like, oh yeah, says who? And be like, says dad. And he's like, I'll call him if you want. I'll call the boss. And they'll be like, okay, fine, you're in charge.
Okay, we'll do it. Yeah, it's like,
but it's the same kind of thing.
For my son Denny. It's like,
Yeah.
oh no, sorry, Mr. Corleone.
Yeah.
It's the thing is like it's incredible that people I find it amazing that people, like including my coworker, is so convinced that Trump is super guilty.
Yeah.
And that Joe Biden is like,
the
this
bastion
is all
of amazing.
They're trying to create that. Like this guy listens to every talking point the media gives him.
Yeah.
It's like spoon fed. It's incredible, actually. But like it's so incredibly obvious that Joe Biden is crazy guilty, and they're so adamantly trying to pretend like he's not. Like he's like, oh, like this is just they're just going after this poor innocent old
person.
man. Yeah, it's incredible. It's a circus.
Yeah. One last point on this. So just a quote from the New York Post. So this is the letter from the DOJ to Devin Archer's lawyer.
Okay.
Or at least the letter went to Judge Ronnie Abrams. Basically, the letter went to the judge to get the judge to decide on a date for him to show up in jail.
Oh, okay. How about that?
So this is a quote. In light of the appeals court ruling, the DOJ respectfully requests the defendant be ordered to surrender at a date and time determined by the court to a facility designated by the Bureau of Prisons to commence his term of imprisonment. So it's like, oh yes, it's like here is a letter to the judge, and you decide when he shows up to prison. And in light of like the recent ruling, it's like it should be soon. Like most of these, when you tell a judge, or like when they send a request for like a judge to like say when a prison term starts, it's expected to be pretty much immediate. And so it's like, oh yeah, like totally. It's like we weren't intending for it to be like that he should just surrender to go to the Bureau of Prisons right away. It's like, but that's pretty much exactly what you tried to do.
Mm-hmm. I think the testimony too. Here's at the very end of the actual just a little like catch up. So he says Joe Biden said in 2019, "I've never discussed my son or my brother or anyone else anything to do with their businesses." Devin Archer's testimony today confirms that Joe Biden lied to the American people when he said he had no business dealings and definitely wasn't even involved in any way. Like these calls to Joe Biden are not just like a simple phone call. They are vetted and screened by the White House and all the staff. They don't just call them up. They have to be like run through the White House and people in charge. There's no way that Joe Biden did not know who he was talking to, and there's no way that Barack Obama did not know what was going on. This was like top down kind of crap.
Yeah.
So it's like, my gosh, it's unbelievable. Like it's obvious that everyone's lying, everyone's making it up. It's a corruption scandal of the most massive, levels, and the Trump indictment is basically just political theater to distract from the real scandal. That's really what's going on. So I don't know. You got some more, or you want to move
know,
on to
I'm just looking at
CBS
something.
story? Yeah,
So,
your focus is off again.
Well, something we could try next week. I'll tell you. I'll tell you at the end of the show. So let's finish this about talking about Biden. So President Biden acknowledges Hunter Biden's 4-year-old daughter as his granddaughter and Republicans take jabs.
Yeah, of course.
Only because it took 4 years for him to acknowledge her. So President Biden publicly acknowledged Hunter Biden's 4-year-old daughter Navy as his granddaughter for the first time on Friday, and several Republican presidential candidates took jab at the handling of the situation. Statement Friday, the president said he and the first lady only want his best for all our grandchildren, including Navy.
What a garbage human being.
Yeah, what a garbage. So, born to London Robinson, Arkansas, a woman who filed a paternity suit against Hunter Biden in 2019, DNA confirmed that he is the father and he agreed to pay child support, except he's been fighting in court several times, not only to have Navy Roberts' name was Navy Biden, but then they changed it to Navy Roberts because apparently the lawyers for the Bidens were quite good, and they're like, oh yeah, the Biden name has like a negative connotation. So you can't have the last name of the Bidens. And it's like, oh, okay. So from the president, our son Hunter and Navy's mother London are working together to foster a relationship that is in the best interests of their daughter. Well, except for the fact that he somehow convinced the courts to reduce his child support payment from, I believe it was $50,000 a month to like 8 or 9.
Yep.
So it's like, oh yeah, like the best for the child. So preserving her privacy as much as possible going forward, the president said in the statement, "This is not a political issue; it's a family matter. Jill and I only want what's best for all our grandchildren, including Navy." Yep.
Oh my gosh.
This guy is such a sack of crap.
Yep.
Like, this guy refused to acknowledge. Like, they would ask him. They'd be like, okay, like, do you have any comments about the fact that you still haven't acknowledged your, like, 7th grandchild? He's like, no comment. It's like, yeah. But now it's like, we just want what's best for all our grandchildren. It's like, well, this is probably significant because it's showing that he's dropped so low in the polls.
Yep.
Because people really, really don't like a president that refuses to acknowledge his own family members.
Which is why he switched, because it's politically expedient for him now to like pretend like he actually cares about the job.
Oh yeah, it was funny because like there was a CNN story that I was hearing about yesterday.
Okay.
And there was one guy who's like, yeah, like the president was just being a schmuck. Like, so is Hunter Biden. Like, Hunter Biden has tried to like distance himself from this kid. The president has refused to acknowledge him. And the lady on CNN is like, well, you're just being mean to the Bidens. And he's like, what? No, I'm stating facts. That's not being mean. It's like, they're not good people. And she's like, well, we don't know all the details. It's like, he refused to acknowledge her for 4 years. That's the details. She's like, well, let's move on.
This is inconvenient to my
inconvenient to my network's narrative.
Yeah,
so,
can't have that. Anyways, but let's talk about that's the American crime family.
Let's quickly bring in the Canadian
crime
stuff.
Family.
So it's like 1984. So of course this is something that's just hit Canada. Poilievre slams Trudeau's after law causes Meta to permanently end news access in Canada. If you're Canadian, you've seen this little tab.
I love the screenshot that they got of Trudeau.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
Article. I was like, I don't know if this was on purpose, but it was really well done. And I was like, yep.
So on Tuesday, Pierre Poilievre reacted to Meta's announcement it would no longer permanently be ending Canadians' ability to view news on Instagram and Facebook in response to Trudeau Liberals' Online News Act. Conservative Party leader lamented Meta's decision, but placed the blame solely at the feet of the Prime Minister, who slammed for once again failing the people of our nation. It's like 1984 he began. You have a Prime Minister passing a law to make sure news articles disappear from the internet. Who would ever have imagined that in Canada the federal government would pass laws banning people from effectively seeing the news? Who would have thought we'd have a government who would pass a law to manipulate the algorithms of the internet so the Prime Minister only sees what he wants them to see? He wanted to suggest that Trudeau doesn't want Canadians to see the facts of life after 8 years of Liberal leadership. Here's my response, Poilievre said. With his big tech or Trudeau's big government, censorship is always and everywhere wrong. That's why we'll bring home freedom of speech online, on campus, and everywhere else in this country. Yep. Like,
I think...
Solid statement from Poilievre.
Here's a question for you.
Yep.
What do you think okay, so there's the truth, and then there's the truth. You
Yeah.
know, like the Simpsons quote.
Yeah.
The truth, like the truth that they say is like, oh, this is about making sure that news articles get the fair share, and Facebook and Google, they're just being big old meanies and targeting like Canadians about protecting Canadians. What's the real truth here, Stephen? What do you think?
Well, the real truth is that if you analyze where people got their news, especially in the past few years since the start of COVID and the government lockdowns and the government response to COVID, Facebook was one of the primary methods of sharing information and news about headlines that were going on during COVID, and particularly headlines that contravene the government narrative on a lot of things, such as masks, vaccine efficacy, and of course, side effects and the negative repercussions of lockdowns. All these things were being consistently shared on Facebook, and so that went against the government's ideals, because the government simply wanted people to sit down, shut up, and accept it. Whereas there was a significant number of people, including us, who would not sit down, shut up, and accept it, and we continue to try and push towards people being shrewd and understanding the reality of what's really going on in this country.
Don't tread on me.
Yeah, please leave me alone.
That's right.
It's on the back of my car.
Hong Kong, Hong Kong, Stephen, Hong Kong.
Yeah. Beware my Cobra chicken.
So it's dog whistle for Hail Hitler right there.
Honk, honk.
Hong Kong.
For those who don't get that reference, that was actually said in Parliament. Be like, we need to talk about Hong Kong, which is an acronym for Hail Hitler. And it's like, are you serious?
Didn't Freedom Tunes actually do a thing on her?
So good.
It was so good.
Because they did it was like Hong Kong, and then she's like, Nazi! Yeah, and then it was like everything in Justin Trudeau's, and then finally the end one was like Justin Trudeau in a black outfit, like very clearly like allegories to
walk away, no problem.
To fascism, and it's just like, we will take away their bank accounts and all of their freedom because they oppose me.
And she's walks away like whistling.
And it's
Nothing
like,
to see here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and by the way, that's the new minister of mental health. This minister needs mental health, care.
That's about as stupid as the whole as race is not a genetic construct.
It's just about that, as dumb as that. Yeah,
that's about as dumb.
But here's the thing.
Let's keep moving on.
Okay, so the next story is interesting because so the first one is Polyev pointing out the obvious that Trudeau is basically killing this country with censorship. But here's a bunch of people who refuse to be silent. And I hate to admit it, but I'm super proud of the Muslim community.
Oh, especially in comparison to the Christians.
I was hoping the Christian community would do this, but they're not. They're just not.
Well, it's Canadian Christians. And unfortunately, Canadian Christians, you have 1%. 1% of Canadian Christians are actually willing to stand up and say, this is what I believe, and it doesn't matter what come what may. We wouldn't have we've had one pastor, Derek Reimer was arrested for protesting drag queen events here in Calgary.
Sure. For you're talking about for the LGBT stuff, right?
Yeah. And it's okay. But in the United States, they had 200 people show up to protest these drag queen events in a small town in Wisconsin. In Calgary, of a city of 1.4 million people, how many people protest, when we went to the drag queen protest, before we knew it was canceled, how many people showed up to that? Probably 50, maybe, tops?
Yep.
And so it's this is how much Canadian Christians can muster? Maybe, probably not even, probably between 30 and 50.
If it's here, just for a little context, all you have to do, imagine having one church, a single church in Calgary, and all you have to do is get everyone in your church to show up. You would have easily 100 people.
Yep.
One church, only a single church. Every member of the church shows up. You have 100 people, and that's a small church. That's a very tiny church. Imagine imagine getting Center Street, or First Alliance, or some of the big churches, and say every single member encouraging all.
See, I wouldn't even I would be happy just even if they spoke from the pulpit. and said this is wrong openly. But they won't do even that because these churches in Canada refuse to take a stand because they are so afraid of people saying, oh, you take a stand against something I disagree with, or you take a stand for something I disagree with, then, I won't come to your church. I'm like, it is entirely, and this is why I rage against this so much, the seeker-sensitive gospel has dulled and blurred, and it has ruined how we are supposed to deal with modern society in Christendom. Absolutely. Because it treats everybody, it's like, oh no, we can't say anybody is doing wrong, we can't say what is wrong, all we can do is just hope that they'll darken the door of the church, and then eventually, after some long time of being in the church, and be like, oh yeah, this is what the Bible actually says about this. And it's like, well, why didn't you say it in the first place? Oh, we were afraid you wouldn't show up.
It's the, what's his name? The famous, pastor who we covered like a while back for at Andy Stanley.
Yeah.
It's the Andy Stanley model. It's basically the way I look at it. Andy Stanley decided to completely and totally abandon his father Charles Stanley's approach, and he's like, I'm going to make a seeker-sensitive model.
Yeah.
And every church that has enacted that has become basically a spineless church.
Yeah.
And they're just terrified of saying anything critical about anything cultural because they're afraid of being political. And of course, the constant thing we always get is like, oh, we can't be political. Like, what the crap are you talking? I don't even know, like, chapter and verse. Where do you get the idea that we can't be political?
Yeah.
Where? It's like, it's about the gospel, Daddy. Give me a break.
No.
Gosh. But thankfully,
it's like, well, it's like, how are you expected to share the gospel if simply sharing the gospel as that guy did? Like, he's not even deliberately calling out drag queens. He's just he's just reading from the Bible, and then he has 5 cops come and arrest him, and then other people, like, it was further down the story about that incident. I was gonna read it, but of course, like, it got cut out because I don't know why the feed disappeared. But
it's the system's trying to shut you down.
Yeah, system's trying to shut me down. But there was a section of that article where it said that he was only one of 4 people arrested that day, and the others were arrested for praying out loud.
How dare they?
Or they got arrested and then they released with a warning. I'm like, how do you have a warning for praying out loud? That's not a warning.
Yeah, it's a Christian nation in name only. It's just not, doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, but anyways, let's read this story.
What are the Muslims?
So, Canadian Muslims just staged million-person march to protest against Trudeau Liberals' push for LGBTQ indoctrinations in schools.
Way to go, man.
So, businessman and Muslim activist Kamal A. Sheikh, I think that's probably how you pronounce it, I know it's a C, is organizing a million-person march to protest gender ideology and Pride Month in school. He told the Post-Millennial that his goal is to bring together 1 million Canadians of all faiths from coast to coast on September 20th. Although he rarely had been in the media spotlight as a businessman, Al Sheikh has been a prominent protest organizer in the last month as he has led groups of Muslims and Christians in Ottawa who are opposed to children being told they can change their gender without telling their parents, and to pornographic literature used in sex education. I am optimistic, absolutely, if there's one thing that's going to be inspiring Canadians from coast to coast to go down and protest, it's the kids and their innocence and their families. He says that LGBTQ ideology is being preached to children and has shared photographs of the post-millennial school pamphlets that specifically target Muslim children. One such form asks the question, can I still be Muslim if I am queer? It assures the reader there's no conflict between Islam and homosexuality.
That is such... Okay, that is so... Okay. You have to remember how incredibly arrogant and like completely wrong that is. Like, you're basically telling someone as a non-believer I think twice. I'm a Christian. I think twice about educating somebody about what the Quran says.
Yeah.
Not knowing anything about the Quran, and these idiots think that they have the ability to the right to tell children that, oh, by the way, you're Muslim cleric, your parents, and all the people who study the Quran and like all the hadiths and all of the scriptures of Islam, oh, they're all wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. Like, You have to be insanely arrogant,
Mm-hmm.
like to be able to make a statement like that. It's insane.
Yeah.
My
Okay.
gosh.
All right. So let's finish this off. So, going to our final story of the day, Christopher Freeland. Christopher Freeland boasts of not owning a vehicle while failing to mention taxpayer-funded chauffeur service. This is exactly like the story which we had from, I believe it was last week or 2 weeks ago, about the guy who went off the armored vehicle and hopped onto a bicycle for the last mile to try and convince people that he was biking the entire way, when literally he was driven, and then he had extra security bring his bike for him in an extra vehicle.
That's bad. Here, go down to the video, because you have a video of her.
Okay, here we go.
The conference, okay? So put it full screen.
For the Deputy Minister, what do you say to Prince Edward Islanders who woke up to a significant increase in gas, diesel, and oil this morning between 6 and 8 cents per liter?
Okay. Well, I have been talking about that with Keith and Sean. Keith and Sean and I had breakfast together before that.
One of the key industries here on Prince Edward Island in particular is our tourist industry. And particular to that, our car tourist industry. People traveling from our region to this island to be tourists. With policies like the carbon tax and the clean fuel standards, which are by design meant to reduce consumption of fuel and reduce... Are you worried that's going to have a chilling effect on one of the key industries here on Prince Edward Island?
So yeah, I'm very aware of that. And actually, with a couple of my colleagues, we drove here last night from Halifax.
What?
We very much believe in PEI. We believe in the tourism industry, and we believe in the PEI economy overall.
Wow.
Was about all of that. You guys are nice.
I did want to say one more thing, though. I don't need you to retread the ground you've gone over, because you've answered this question from the other side. But you are facing a lot of
Kamala Harris laugh.
in particular from local politicians, local provincial governments that say this, they're not opposed to it, but it's coming too soon, too fast. They need more time to adapt. What do you say to that?
You know what? I say I do really understand. I really understand the challenges. A fact that still shocks my dad is I don't actually own a car because I live in downtown Toronto. I'm like, I don't know, 300 meters from the nearest subway. I walk, I take the subway, I make my kids walk and ride their bikes and take the subway. It's actually healthier for our family. I can live that way. I can live that way.
Oh, how lovely.
Don't mention that. Yeah, you
she gets driven everywhere. She basically
well, and
gets
of course, like Pierre
everywhere.
Poilievre's comments about this. So, oh yes, move to Toronto and get a bike. That's the answer. You should go to a heavily urbanized area where you're close to the subway and you can bike everywhere. And it's like, well, guess what? Prince Edward Island has a very small population, and you can't bike everywhere. Like even going across the how? Let's see, how big is Prince Edward Island? How big is this island? Like, let's do distance. Distance tip to tip. About 174 miles. Good luck biking that. Like, yes, you can easily cover that in a day in a car.
Yeah.
But not on a bike.
But not on the bike and not by transit.
There's no transit to go across PEI.
That's their answer to everything.
Oh, yeah, mass transit.
Transit and all that. But here, two things I noticed. I don't know if you noticed this, Stephen. Do you notice how incredibly creepy her, like when she's listening to answers? This is my impression of her listening to an answer.
For those who can't see, Danny is making very weird faces and facial expressions.
It's almost like she has Tourette's and she can't stop herself. It's like it's the most creepy thing ever. Like I don't know, like I've noticed, Chrystia Freeland is incredibly when she's listening
unnerving.
to people talk. It is incredibly unnerving. You feel like she's being possessed by some like demon, and it's like like a fight taking like who's gonna answer, the demon or like the real Chrystia Freeland? We don't really know because a little bit of battle will take over. Yeah, basically, exactly, right? the other thing that's so insanely like she says it with a smile, but listen how insanely insensitive it is. It's like, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. It's like, by the way, like that. Imagine you have people like you have a family and you're standing on as you have like a gang and they're basically coming in and they're burning your house down. You're like, oh my god, why are you burning our house down? Don't you know?
How you're feeling.
How are we gonna do? It's like, I understand. I totally understand how that must feel. But you can get a new house.
Boys.
Yeah, that's right. Keep going, boys. No problem.
Yeah.
Like these people are so insanely. It's like terrorism with a smile.
Yeah.
It's basically what it is because she understands, but she doesn't care. That's what she doesn't say. She literally could not care less how it impacts everyone. And the other part that she said that was incredibly like, like tone deaf was, I believe. It's like, I believe in people at PEI. I believe in the tourism industry. I believe it's like the fact that you believe something doesn't make it magically like stop being a problem. It's like, hey, by the way, there's there's some people out there like they're trying to steal your car. I believe in people. I really do. I believe in people. It's like there's somebody's like somebody just grabbed your dog and ran away. It's like, I believe it's gonna be just fine. He's gonna be just fine. And like do you realize how insanely like not only like out of touch and callous that is, but it almost sounds like she's like literally like got like a mental issue,
mental tick,
like something, because you're like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense.
Nope.
You believe it's like this is a major problem, and we're worried about the speed that this is being implemented.
I believe that you'll be okay.
I had a dream, and I believe that the people of PEI will come out of this just fine. It's like, what is wrong with you? Like, my gosh. So, yeah. I mean, speaking of somebody that should have,
oh my gosh, I actually
number one on the cabinet shuffle, eh?
Here, Daddy. Here's my rendition of the Christopher-Freeland MLK speech.
MLK speech.
I believe that one day all our children will have to walk because we'll ban cars. And they'll be walking hand in hand, children and grandchildren.
You forgot one important thing, Steven. It's like, I believe that.
Oh, yeah, the facial expressions.
Will
children and grandchildren
have to walk everywhere. Like, I don't understand what is up with her. Like, it literally looks like a physical trick.
Yeah.
It is bizarre. I've never seen anything like it. Like,
it's truly
if any politician, you have them listen. Literally, go back, like, please go back and show it again to show that I'm not making this up.
Oh yeah, all right.
As she's listening to somebody answering her, it is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. Like, politicians, when you ask, look at her.
They're not opposed to it, but it's coming too soon, too fast. They need more time to adapt. What do you say to that?
You know what?
And then she's normal when she starts talking.
Really understand.
And then skip forward to like when she's not when she's listening again.
The subway is
here on Prince Edward Island. Are you worried that's going to have a chilling effect on one of the key industries here on Prince Edward
Island? Her face! She's like, it's all over the place.
Yeah, I'm very aware of that. And
it's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. It's so bizarre. And by the way, this is not the only time I've ever seen her do this.
Mm-hmm.
She does this in like in hearings where she's like, she goes beyond smile to sad, and even like did you hear that Kamala Harris laugh that she had at one point?
The Kamala Harris laugh?
She had like a little cackle. She had a cackle.
Oh yeah, she did it for like a brief period of time.
For a very brief moment, she cackled, and then immediately went to serious face again. And I was like, what was that? The heck was that? She literally cackled, and then went like almost like, why are you laughing? There shouldn't be like a laugh here. It's bizarre. We have the most bizarre, like weird, like almost like down to like bizarro world in our government. Justin Trudeau, he has people literally yelling in his face. And he's like, it's like, what the heck are you doing?
It's
everyone here is yelling at you and angry. And you're like, it's bizarre. We have a completely like, bizarre, like, Canada. So like, yeah, again,
yeah,
just wanted to show you that
things are just
that was
going
bizarre
just
to me.
amazingly up here in America's hat.
Oh, I mean, America thinks their clown show is bad. Our clown show in Canada has been like that for years.
Their clown show at least has judges to try and stop it. At least has checks and balances. Whereas up here in Canada, we have nothing.
We basically
everything is a rubber stamp for the tyranny of the authoritarian Trudeau.
It's basically what he always wanted. He always wanted dictatorship of China. Well,
all right. So
the man went.
Yep, that's where we're going to finish off for tonight. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you've been joining us in the chat, which I guess hasn't been that much today. I guess it's a Tuesday evening, so it is what it is.
Well, one person actually commented.
Yeah, I know. Kissing Gonzo has joined recently, so we appreciate the compliments on our channel title. We thought it was a good name as well. So if you want to check out our other video content, you can find that on YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble. And of course, if you're looking for non-censored content, then of course you can check us out on BitChute and Rumble, because there are many things that you cannot say on YouTube because they are filled with censorious bastards. If you want to check out our text content, you can check us out at theshrewdsuits.com, or you can check us out on Twitter, Getter, and Facebook. And then finally, nope, that's everything. That is everything. So, Danny, well, no, I signed us up for Tuesday. I am so tired. Here is a brief story. I have been up since 4 a.m. this morning because I woke up and I heard my children playing upstairs. And I go upstairs and I find that my two youngest, Abigail and Rebecca, have decided at 4 a.m. that this is a good time to have a bath without mommy and daddy's permission or supervision. And Abby is taking water and throwing it like this all over the bathroom. And I'm just like, as I come upstairs and I just look at them and I'm just like, in a look of utter incredulity. I'm like, what are you doing? Why would you think this is a good idea? And so, yeah, I dried them off and I'm like, all right, you're going to bed. And like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about this. And why on earth are you having a bath right now? So hopefully that doesn't happen, and hopefully I can get a good night's sleep tonight, but we'll see.
Yeah, you'll do it, man.
All right.
The life of a father, hey?
The life of a father. But before I let you go, and before we see you on Thursday, we always like to remind you here at the Shrewd Dudes Podcast, why be rude when you can be shrewd. Have a great night, everybody. We will see you on Thursday at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. And as always, God bless.
All right. Good night, everybody.